Hello and welcome to this game review. So in this one we will talk a bit about opening principles and how to punish the opponent for not developing the pieces. And generally, you can punish the opponent by developing your own pieces and opening up the position as quickly as possible when the opponent's pieces will not be ready and yours will be ready to fight. So white started very nicely. This is the Scotch opening, and black generally has to take, otherwise the two pawns will become too strong. After f6, d5, already white has a lot more space and he has also won a pawn. So already white's position is more or less win. With c5, white goes back to d1. It doesn't really make sense to go all the way back to d1 as now we will have a harder time developing the rook. So maybe we should put the queen somewhere else, develop the pieces, castle, queenside or kingside, and start pushing the pawns in the center, as this is where the opponent does not have a pawn. Okay, queen d1. Now the opponent develops the queen, so the opponent is doing everything wrong. He has pushed too many pawns. He has no developed pieces except for the queen, which has moved around twice. So now we can try to develop an initiative. So knight h6, bishop d3 is a nice move, developing the bishop. Queen h5 is a check, and king f8, and knight d2. So now black also does not have castling rights, which means his rooks will have a hard time opening up, getting into the game, and white is almost fully developed. After knight f7, white castles kingside, so this is extremely good by white. All the pieces are developed, and now we must simply try to open up the position and attack the king, and the simplest way to do this is with a pawn break of e5, and for example f4 and e5, and this will force open the f-file, and then the rook will attack the king, and this should be enough to win the game. Notice now we cannot do this because, well, here we cannot do this because of this check, and this would be a discovered check on the bishop and the king. So we should play the move king h1 at some point, but then we will do this f4 move anyway. So instead white takes here, which is fine as well. Knight f3, getting rid of the blockading piece. Maybe we could just play something like b3 and then knight c4, and then again play f4 while black is not developed. Okay, knight f3, queen b2, black takes a pawn, but this doesn't really matter much. And here white exchanges queens. Generally we should not exchange queens if our opponent's king is a lot weaker than ours. We should leave the queens on the board, as now after we eventually finally play f4, e5, once the position gets opened up for this king, the queens on the board will be more dangerous for black because his pieces are not in the game, so we will be able to attack him. But white exchanges, and this is okay, but only if we now finally try to attack the opponent's king. And you mentioned you did not find the plan here, but if in chess we do not find the plan, what can we do? We have to sit there, we have to think, we have to formulate a plan and try to understand what's the most important thing here. As usual, we must activate the pieces. And how can we do this? Well, here f4 is more or less winning. Now we're simply attacking the pawn, so black has to react somehow. If they defend, we will still take it because this is a check, and we will have a strong pawn on e6. So if black takes, we will take here, and we will continue developing the rooks, rook a to f1. Next we can play e5, maybe d6, and we have the only open file. We have some tactics with bishop h7 at some point to give checkmate, and there's a lot of problems for black. We can also go rook f7 to occupy the 7th rank, and black is lost because his pieces are not developed. But rook a b1, this is kind of abstract. This works, but it's not very accurate. Black plays d6 and now bishop b5, but this move doesn't really make any sense at all. This move doesn't do anything for white's position. And again, you have 13 minutes here. Stop and think. If we cannot think during our chess games, we will not improve, and we will only do the moves that we find natural. But in chess, to get better, we must think. There is no other way to play. And here, if you thought you would find the move f4 again, trying to open this rook on the f-file, and here, for example, after king e7, we can take, and this time it's not as devastating, but after, for example, rook b3, we can at some point put the rook on g3, try to attack the king side, or double on the f-file, and attack here. And again, white is better because black is not developed. So if the opponent is not developed, we should open up the position. Bishop e5. Now black gets time to finish development. h5 is a bit random, h4. And now we're not playing f4 anymore, and white just moved around randomly. And to avoid such things, we must simply think. We cannot make a move until we have a move, if you understand it. If we don't have a good idea, we have to sit there until we find a good idea. And sometimes this will be difficult, but such is chess. It is a difficult game, and we cannot expect it to be very obvious what to do all the time. Okay, now black is somewhat better because his pawns are on dark squares, which means that his bishop is better and it's not restricted by the pawns, though still white has fighting chances. Here black should of course play b6 before developing the bishop, not lose the pawn, but now white doesn't find the hanging pawn on b7, which would win the game instantly, because now white has threats of using the pin, as well as simply infiltrating on the b file. So here white plays g4 very quickly, and maybe he had this idea when playing rook g1, but we cannot play only with ideas. On every single move, we must think about our checks, captures, and attacks, and we cannot just play the move that we were planning to play. Otherwise, we will miss chances like this. After g4, now this pawn on f2 is very weak. Rook a f8, again we should take this pawn. Okay, f3, and black finally gives up this pawn again. And finally white takes it, and now we are winning. Now white infiltrates on the b file, and everything else is quite easy. White takes one pawn, takes a bishop, takes a rook, and the game is over. So you finished with 12 minutes, so this means the game was quite easy. Generally, I would suggest if you don't find a plan, you have to sit there and look for a plan. So you must not forget that chess is a very difficult game. Not everything will be simple to you, or to me, or to anyone. So we must sit there and wait until we figure out a good idea, and only then should we play moves. Because moves like bishop b5, they clearly state that you don't really know what you're doing here. And until you find a good plan, you cannot make a move.